like, was it primarily taken up by this, you know, medical kind of role? I mean, what would talk us through just your day-to-day life there?
Yeah, totally. Okay, well, we would wake up, and basically the first thing we would have is a muster. After we cleaned our rooms, got dressed, we would have what's called a muster, which is like a sort of, I guess it's like a Navy type term for like a gathering. And we would have uniform inspections, and they would inspect our berthings, because we lived in dorms. Like, there was 7 girls in a dorm, and it was connected by a bathroom to another 7 girls. And so there was like one bathroom for all 14 kids, yeah.
I mean, in a normal, for lack of a better word, situation, I mean, that would create a lot of problems.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, when that's all you know, you make it work, you know? You got to take a shower somehow. But yeah, and so from there, they give us the results of our birthing inspections and that sort of thing. And I mean, you had to be on time to this muster, otherwise you'd be in trouble. You'd be pulled up in front of the group and said, "Flunk, you're late." Or in some cases, they would dump buckets of ice water over kids' heads for being late.
So it was humiliation was the punishment? You said you'd be in trouble. What was the kind of trouble you'd be in? Just those?
Humiliation, yeah, or yeah, like I said, with the bucket of ice water. I mean, that happened numerous times.
Ever abuse? I mean, for lack of some people might call that abuse, but any physical abuse?
Not for being late. I mean, you know, the labor, yes, that is definitely abuse, but I mean, there was one time, not as a general thing. There are definitely a few things that I witnessed, but it's not like that happened all the time.
But what might be one of those things?
Well, it talks about it in the book. There was one time that one of the teachers punched me in the face after yeah, basically I was saying that at the time, I was saying, oh, well, I didn't want to do my math because I was so behind, you know, I couldn't get the help that I needed. And, you know, she was mad at me, and she put me in the little library room, and, you know, I was trying to get out, and she basically punched me in the face. But I mean, honestly, like, I know that that's bad, but like, if I could be punched in the face and that would mean that I didn't have to go through all that psychological abuse, it's like I would take that over everything else, you know?
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
And makes sense to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So we're talking about you not being good at math. It's okay, I'm horrible at math. But the question then is, what other educational trainings or programs were there that were bizarre? I mean, what were the most kind of odd ones?
Well, the academic studies we did in the afternoon. So we did it from about 1 till 6, and then we had dinner, and then we went back after dinner from like 7 until 9, where we did our Scientology studies every night. And so, you know, I mean, there you learn about the basics of Scientology, but I mean, some of the strangest things, it ranges from yelling at ashtrays, you know, to, I mean, that's a communication practice drill, you know, or you would actually...
What does that mean? Why yell at ashtrays? What is a communication practice drill? It sounds very military.
Yeah, well, it's so complicated, but basically, it's when you train, you know, in Scientology they have counseling, which is called auditing, and basically you're supposed to practice telling the person what to do, and if you say it with enough intention, then they'll just do it, and they won't, you know, try to get around doing it. And so yelling at the ashtray was a way of learning how to direct your intention into something. I know.
Yeah, it sounds complicated.
It's crazy.
I appreciate you trying to explain it. But,
Sorry.
But what about this notion of the Chinese lessons? What's that about?
Yes, the Chinese school. That's basically where at our musters, where our gatherings, they would have quotations from L. Ron Hubbard from his policies, and they would write them out on butcher block paper in big letters and hold them up so we could all see them. And they would read off the quote and say, "What is it?" And then we would all supposed to recite it in unison, and we would have to do that until they could take away the paper and we could say it. We could say it without looking at the paper, so we knew it by heart, basically.
And where did that come from?
That came from, L. Ron Hubbard said it was from his studies of learning how people in China were taught. I mean, it's basically a way to get us to learn something verbatim without ever being able to think about what we're actually saying.
Right.
You know?
Mm-hmm. You've said you were brainwashed. Mm-hmm. How did you unbrainwash yourself? Are you brainwashed
That's a good
now?
question. No, I mean, it does have lasting effects. No,
You
but I
seem
mean,
very normal.
Thank you.
Whatever normal means.
I know, no, but I mean, it was just such a process, you know? I mean, it's so hard because, you know, when you're there, you think you're crazy. It's like you see certain things and, you know, they say that's not what's happening, you know, and you're like, am I crazy? You know, did that person not just get punched in the face? Or is there something wrong with me that I'm trying to make them bad in my mind? It's like such a mind craziness that it's like, it takes a while to get over it. But after a while, you know, of these things happening to you, you know, throughout your whole life, you know, sleep deprivation, being held in rooms, being separated from your family, like, you know, the coerced abortions, like after a while, it's like, okay, you know, like this is happening and I can't ignore it anymore.
So you used to not see your parents that often, as you told us, but you would visit your mom in Clearwater.
Yes, that's
And
true.
you sort of lived in a life of luxury, relative luxury there.
Yes.
And then you would go back.
Right, yeah.
Explain for us that process.
Well, when I was at the ranch from when I was 6 till I was 12, but there were 2 occasions during that time for a couple of months when I would go to Clearwater and where my mom was working. You know, I wouldn't see my dad during that time, unfortunately. So usually on the weekends, like when I was still at the ranch, I wouldn't see my mom. So it was like one or the other. But yeah, I mean, my mom was an executive of the church, and the way that, you know, the higher up executives are treated is just, there's such a discrepancy between that and the average Sea Org member. I mean, they get elaborate snack platters, they have, you know, down comforters on their beds, which I know is normal, but it was not normal there. You know, they have special cotton shirts, their laundry gets done for them, their meals, you know, get made for them, like right there. You know, she was able to watch TV and just have all sorts of freedoms that other Sea Org members didn't have. And that was hugely eye-opening to me because I was used to being at the ranch and having to do all this labor and uniform inspections and all this stuff that, you know, seeing her there was like, whoa, how do I get to this so I don't have to go back to the ranch, you know?
And speaking of how it all unraveled, you're leaving. I mean, your brother first left, right?
Yes, he did.
And is that when it all started?
I mean, that's sort of when my family life started going downhill there. I mean, yeah, I mean...
Your mom cheated on your father.
Yes. And my brother, when he left, it was just, you know, he'd always been there throughout my whole life. And, you know, even though I didn't see my parents, he was always at the ranch with me. So I did see him. And so when he left, it was like, you know, you're taught that people who leave are bad. And it was like, okay, well, I know my brother's not bad, so it was sort of like planted the seed, you know?
What else do you think made you know that you had to leave? Was there a pinnacle moment? I mean, you know, when we tell these stories, we all want to look for that moment of clarity.
I know.
Especially being brainwashed, it's almost like an epiphany.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's hard because it was really gradual. I mean, you know, the year before we left, we did spend a year in Australia on a mission for the church where we were supposed to raise money to buy this building for a new church there. Mm-hmm. And in being there, we were able to sort of see the outside world. You know, we were able to meet other non-Scientologists and other just regular public Scientologists. You know, some of them had kids. Their kids were adorable. We weren't allowed to have children. And just, you know, see sort of that there's a whole world out there. And so when we went back to LA after that mission, it was like everything was in plain view. It was like, okay, back to 15-minute meals. You can't go to bed before 1 a.m. Oh, wait, you have to stay up all night, even though you did yesterday. And it was just like, it put a lot of things in plain sight. Like there was no denying it. You know, they started taking away your phones, your internet access, all that sort of thing. And so I guess that was a big turning point for me.
As it would be. We actually reached out, our producers here at Huffpost Live, to the Church of Scientology International, and they provided us with this written statement. The church has long respected the family unit while accommodating and helping those raising children. The church does not engage in any activities that mistreat, neglect, or force children to engage in manual labor. The church follows all laws with respect to children. Claims to the contrary are false. They then went on to write this: "It should be noted that once her time at the school was completed, Miss Hill, as an adult, voluntarily chose to continue in the church's religious order. The book itself acknowledges it contains recreated dialogue, descriptions of the church when Miss Hill attended years ago, as well as second and third hand accounts of how the church is today, are equally dubious." Jenna, what do you say to people who make this argument? I mean, perhaps even a fair argument that you could have left on your own accord. You could have left sooner than you left.
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, first of all, though, it does say that when I finished my school there, so I mean, I left the ranch when I was 12. So does finishing school without a high school diploma, is that what finishing school is? No, I don't think so. I mean, that's a ridiculous thing to even say. And actually, when I was 12 years old, you know, they say that I stayed there of my own volition. When I was 12 years old, I was told I was a Sea Org member, and I was told that I had no choice. I wanted to go back home to my mom, and they told me no. They physically prevented me from getting onto the plane. So that they say that is crazy. It's a lie.
Why? Why did they prevent you from seeing your mom? What is the reasoning behind that?
I mean, it's about control. And I mean, at that time, I didn't know it, but my mom had gotten in trouble for her affair. So she was sort of persona non grata to them. And I guess she had told them, yes, bring Jenna back. And now she was like this horrible person, a nobody to them because they found out about her affair. So they decided that, you know, anything she said, they should go against it, I guess. I don't know. But that definitely wasn't taking into account that I was 12 years old. I was a child, and I wanted to go back, and they didn't let me.
You were a child. You now have a child. You have 2 children.
Yes.
Your children, I'm assuming, also have their grandparents in their life.
Yes, yes.
Do you think that you were raised, I mean, how can I phrase this? You're raising your children.
Yes.
Your mom didn't raise you when you were there.
Mm-hmm.
Who raised you?
I mean, we almost raised each other at the ranch. Like, when I was sad, when I was crying, I didn't go to an adult at the ranch. I went to my best friend who was in the bunk underneath me. You know, when I was young, I was really like afraid of the night, and I had bad dreams, and like sometimes I would go sleep in her bed and she would comfort me. Those were the only people who you could talk to, and we raised each other.
And are you in touch with any of those people now? Can you be? Those people who helped raise you?
Yeah, I am with some of them. I mean, not the ones that are still involved in the church. I mean, many of the people in that video that you showed, I know those people and I know their stories, and it's so unfortunate that they're on there making those videos because I know the truth about what has really happened in their lives.
Do you think they don't know the truth, or do they just have a different version of the truth?
I think it's both.
Why would they be there?
They would do anything to back up their church. I mean, if you speak out about the church when you're there, it's like it's the highest crime. You risk losing your family, you know, all of your friends. And if you're like me, like when your friends are the ones who raised each other, that's a huge loss, you know?
Of course. You seem so poised.
Thank you. I don't feel that way, but thank you.
No, but you seem that way. I mean, it seems, just based on what you described, it seems like, I mean, as you said, some of that emotion has to carry through. I mean, how do you stay so strong?
I mean, it has been like 8 years since I left, and you know, I mean, I have my own family now, and so I've sort of moved on, you know. When I first left, it was hard. It was crazy, you know. I tend to get more, like, there's certain things that I do, like, you know, like I would maybe cry about or whatever, and there's other things that just make me like angry. Like now that I have my own children, like looking back at that, you know, I know how vulnerable children are now that I didn't really know before, and I know how innocent they are, and that just makes me angry, you know.
You've said that your uncle, David MIscavige, is an evil man. What makes him so evil?
I mean, the fact that, you know, he did these things behind my back, you know. He was nice to my face and was pulling all the strings behind the scene to basically separate me from my husband, who, you know, I mean, now he's like the father of my children. I mean, if he succeeded, I would never have my children, who are the center of my life, you know?
And you know, you brought up your husband. He, of course, was in the LA, the kind of celebrity office, right?
Yes.
Very different place, I would imagine,
Yes.
than where you were. How
Yeah.
did you meet?
Well, he actually, he wasn't working there when I met him. He worked there before I met him. So we both worked in the church at a different place in LA, and we met there.
And I know that the only way you were able to leave was by threatening to kill yourself. I mean, were you really
Yes.
suicidal, as you describe in the book?
That's a good question. I mean, that wasn't how I was able to leave. That was actually, you know, in the Sea Org, you're not allowed to sleep together before you get married. And we had, because they wouldn't allow us to get married for the longest time for like the stupidest reason. Anyways, so.
Can you give us one?
Yeah, well, it was because my parents had left the church, and my husband's uncle Larry had once viewed an anti-Scientology website. So the church thought that they were going to get together at our wedding and conspire to bring down the church. And that was the whole reason. It was like crazy.
They sound paranoid. Do you think the church is paranoid?
Yes, I mean, they have people who, you know, speak out against them followed. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I mean, maybe they're worried that people have similar intentions to their own. I don't know. But, yeah, so they had taken Dallas away and basically hidden him in a basement, and were doing the Scientology counseling, which is supposed to purge you of your evil intentions that would cause you to behave in such a manner. And they wouldn't tell me where he was. And, you know, if you read the book, this similar sort of thing had happened to me before, but this time I wasn't going to take it. Like, I was going to find Dallas, and I wasn't going to take their crap, so to speak. And so, and, you know, I tried everything, you know, I tried begging with them, I tried pleading with them, I tried cooperating, and I mean, if I really wanted to kill myself, I would have just jumped out the window. I mean, I'm not saying that I wasn't there, like, I mean, what did I have left after I'd lost Dallas? I didn't have my family, I was just moved across the country once again from all my friends, so I mean, I'm not saying that I wasn't like, seriously, I didn't have anything else to lose, but it was more about, I knew that they had a fear for bad publicity, and they had recently had this Lisa McPherson case going on. You know, it was a murder trial for the church, and so I knew that if I did that, then they would probably tell me where Dallas was, and they did.
You talk about bad publicity, but the church has a lot of good publicity from people who are very powerful, very successful, very famous. John Travolta, Tom Cruise, adherents, but also full endorsers.
Yeah.
Do you think, in your heart of hearts, that they're ignorant to your story and the truths of your story?
I mean, I think that they're definitely separated from it. I mean, obviously the celebrity church is this, they have their own church, you know. It's the most beautiful church that there is. You know, they have their own classrooms, their own special counselors, and, you know, there's no child laborers that work there. And, you know, the staff members, you know, if they get in trouble, they get handled elsewhere. So this stuff isn't flaunted in front of them, but I mean, this information is out there, you know. So I think that if they don't know, they are willfully ignorant, or, you know, when they ask about it, the church, you know, gives them answers, and maybe they're all too ready to accept them because their world would crumble if they found out that they were true.
You've written a book, you've been on TV, you're here at Huffpost Live. How can they not know?
Exactly, and I mean, they have a responsibility to know. They have a moral responsibility to know. If they're going to endorse something, then they need to know what they're endorsing.
And what about an ex-community for people like yourself? I mean, what happens for those who want to leave the church, who've left the church? Can they find people like you? Do you meet with people who have left the church? This is such a unique experience.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you know, me and two other girls, we created a website in 2008. It's ex-scientologykids.com, and
we'll add that to our resource well, just for those of you who are watching at home. We actually also have the statement from the Church of Scientology in our resource well, but we'll definitely add this website as well.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, and we sort of created that as a place where people who are involved in the church but are looking to get out of it, there's some answers there, you know, if they don't think things are quite right, you know, there's some answers there that, you know, help to tell them that they're not the only ones who are feeling that way. Because when you're in the Sea Org, you don't have internet access. You can't watch TV. And so you feel like you're the only one sometimes. And so our website sort of lets them know, okay, you're not the only one. There are other people out here, you know, and also people who have already left, they can share their stories and have a group therapy, you know, so to speak, you know, so that they know that there are other people who are out there supporting them.
You said you don't feel normal all the time, even though I said you look very normal. Do you have flashbacks?
Well...
Do you cry still? Do you ever
Yeah.
get scared of the dark?
You know, that's interesting because when I first left the church, I had nightmares, like every night, like especially when I first left, and it was like being chased to go back there. It was that I was there and all these things were happening, and was I going to raise my hand and say I didn't agree, or was I not? And you know, the moment I spoke out about it, it was like I took back control. I no longer lived in fear of them. It was like whatever psychological thing that was going on, that took care of it for me. And I mean, I can't say that I never have a dream here and there, you know, especially writing the book, you go through all those things, and so it, you know, sort of brings back those memories, but definitely not in like a fearful way, you know. It's not something that I'm afraid of, or, you know, I mean, obviously I've had a lot of experiences there that, you know, make me who I am, you know, so. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
You answered it brilliantly, and I want to thank you for joining us here at Huffpost Live, and I'm so glad you didn't jump out of that window.
Thank you.
Really, and that
so
you've written
much.
this book.
Me
Such
too.
an inspiring story.
Thank
you so much for those of you watching. I wish we could have gotten to more of your questions, but as you know, here at Huffpost Live, the conversation always continues. So